Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all having a wonderful week as always. And if you're not, well, maybe I can help a little bit. So, I got some stories from Poland. I have a story from Afghanistan, from the South, from Iowa, just the regular all over the place stuff. So, if that sounds like your cup of tea, then definitely pull up a stump and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So I was at my grandparents' house, and they lived in Poland. It was basically on the outskirts of a forest. The road to my grandparents' house is parallel, and then it goes off to the right, away from the border of the forest. I was going out to collect some wood for the fire that we always made at the end of the day. I never liked going on my own because I always felt watched, but no one wanted to come with me, so I'm trying to act all tough like, yeah, I don't need you guys anyway. And on my third turn into the forest, walking suddenly feels difficult. It's like I'm half paralyzed. Nothing hurts, it's all fine, but it's just extremely difficult to bring one foot in front of the other and walk towards the forest for some wood. I do it anyway because I had just watched Rambo recently and I am a big, strong man now. So I grab some wood, but I hear noises in the trees. I get creeped out and I start just walking away, trying to kind of be nonchalant about it. As I'm walking back though, I keep on turning around to see if I'm being followed or not. I remember seeing this gray, transparent figure. It was human-like, but almost 7 feet tall, running from tree to tree, and then disappearing into the forest, and then reappearing and repeating the process. I drop all the wood in my hands and I sprint home. The weird thing is that nobody seemed fazed when I ran home. I was sweating and out of breath. They all just were like, yeah, that be happening sometimes. And I don't know, it still sticks with me. Even in the past 20 years, I've walked through that forest maybe twice when it was even close to nighttime. So this is something that happened to me when I was a kid. I think I was around 7 to 9 years old maybe, and we were living in this banged up old house, but the landlord was extremely kind. And the one time I'm talking about, it was the weekend and my parents were out of town, so I had the house left to myself. I stopped playing video games in my room, and I go to the kitchen to pick up a snack. And I pass by the living room on my way, and I see this old man sitting in the recliner chair. I only saw it for a split second though, as I was moving past the doorway into the kitchen. I realized what I just saw and I looked back into the living room, and there's nothing there. Years later, I figured out that the previous owner of the house, which was the landlord's sister, had a husband who died in the home of a stroke while he was sitting in the living room chair. It still spooks me to this day. And there's this one other time that I have a story about when I visited the Stanley Hotel in the Rockies. You can Google the hotel. It was the one used in The Shining. I was around the same age, but probably closer to 7. So my mom and dad took me there, and it was pretty damn cool, really. They have this awesome coffee shop, and there's a little diner in there. It has these huge rainbow trout that they keep in a tank. It was a really cool place overall. But when this happened, there was people all over the place taking tours and stuff. There's a lot of weird stuff too, like they have these staircases that lead up to nowhere, and really strange changes and shifts in the carpet colors. There's mirrors in strange places and things of that nature. So I get away from my parents because I'm a cool kid, and I go really high up the stairs. There's tons of levels, but there's also lots of hallways. I get tired of running around the place, and I look down the hall, and standing in front of me, way down the hall, is a 6-foot man, but like the shadow of a man. His entire body was like a blur or something. I can't quite give the exact details, only that it was a full-grown man. So I turn around, and I just bolt out of there. I look back to see if he's chasing me, and he's gone. It was a dead-end hallway, and he's just gone. When I was 7 or 8 years old, there was a period of time where I had a really bad fever and my parents didn't know what to do. They called 999. They said to put me in a bathtub full of cold water, so they do. And I remember being super cold, and then all of a sudden I felt like I was burning up. I instantly go unconscious. There's this pop, like an actual physical noise, somewhere in the middle of my brain, and I open my eyes, and I'm floating about 2 feet above my body. I'm looking up at the ceiling, but it's not a ceiling anymore. It's kind of hard to describe. It's like I'm looking at some kind of desert. It almost looks like the pictures you would see of Mars, really bleak and seems to go on forever. And then there's a clicking noise. And then there's this huge explosion a ways away. I watch the smoke and fire for what seems like hours, and then I feel another pop, and I'm back in my body. My parents rush me to the A&E. I end up having a super bad case of the flu. So, fast forward years later, I'm in Afghanistan. We're out in the middle of nowhere. The Humvee is keeping to this pre-designated path, trying to avoid IEDs. We're just in a random spot in the desert, and all of a sudden I get this terrible feeling, and I tell the driver to stop, and he does, and he asks what's wrong. I tell him that there's a bomb up ahead, so they look and they check it out, and sure enough, there's signs of a fresh dig, and it's big enough that it would have vaporized all of us. And I remember the night in the bathtub, and even now, I have no explanation for it. I have this experience that happened to me when I was just little, but I still remember it extremely vividly. I was only 5 years old. I was sitting in the living room of some trailer that we lived in at the time. I was sitting on my mom's lap. I was watching her play Super Mario Brothers. I don't remember the exact time, but I do remember it was really late. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say somewhere between 2 or 3 a.m., very late for me to be up. It's summertime in the south, so you can just imagine how friggin' hot it is down here. So we have our windows rolled open. It was those weird horizontal bar type ones that you had to roll open and close. The couch we were sitting on had its back against one of these windows, which faced out towards our backyard and part of the driveway. It was give or take 200 meters, and there was a pine thicket with an open ground between it and the trailer. I remember being really focused on watching Mom playing when I get yanked hard backwards toward the window. My mom jumps up, yelling like a banshee. She grabs a bat, and we keep next to the couch, and she starts beating this arm that was reaching through the window, and it had a hold of me. I didn't quite get a good look at it, so I can't tell you what it looked like. A neighbor heard Mom screaming and came bolting over with a gun and a mag light. I remember the mag light because I thought it was a police light, and little me loved the police. The arm lets go of me. Mom breaks the window while still swinging at the thing, and the neighbor shines their light over and starts screaming and yells, "What the hell is that?" and pops off 3 rounds. My neighbor comes beating on the door, yelling for my mom to open up. And by now, with all the commotion, my 3 youngest sisters are awake as well. Mom lets him in and they start talking. I remember hearing him say the police should be on their way because his girlfriend called them when they heard Mom screaming. The police show up. They take statements from Mom and the neighbor, while the police officer talks to me while they wait for the EMTs to come check me out. The officer asks me if I remember anything or if I saw anything. I tell him I didn't because I was too scared. He gives me a pat on the shoulder and seems to like the answer I gave, and then leaves me with the paramedics. The officers are talking to Mom and the neighbor, and they look scared. And then they talked amongst themselves for a while after they finished questioning the 2. What I assume was the head officer on the scene came up and talked to us. He said they were going to station a few cars in the area, as well as do some patrols for the next few days. He told them to call the police ASAP if anything like this happens again or if they see anything, and told my neighbor that they were okay to fire at it if they needed to keep us or themselves safe. The police start to slowly pull out while Mom and the neighbor talk. One car pulls down the road and stops just at the bend of the driveway. The neighbor offers to let us stay the night, but Mom declines because she doesn't want her boyfriend to get the wrong idea. My neighbor says that all she needs to do is yell and he'll be over, and heads back to his place. Nothing really happened after that, at least from what I remember. It's not really a climatic ending, but I legitimately don't know if anything happened after that, nor would I even know where to begin looking. This story was submitted to me by, I think I'm allowed to use your first name, Kristin, and it's also a really enjoyable story, so let's get into it. And I hope I can do your story justice, Kristin. When I was very young, about a month after I turned 13, I hitchhiked and hopped freight trains to Los Angeles where I knew that I would not be found. Of course, several interesting stories derive from this period in my life, and I believe I've encountered more demons in the flesh than anything else, some angels, and stuff like that, but when I was 13 or 14 years old, and living in abandoned buildings, with large groups of friends, times were different. We were very respectful, we kept our areas clean, and we watched out for each other. We were careful not to be in and out all hours of the day. It gave us all a safe place to sleep, and of course, eventually, they would get torn down, and we'd have to find a new abandoned building, which was never too far away. Unfortunately, people are not as resourceful or respectful it seems now, and that a lot of the more bad people multiply as younger generations go on. I do have a lot of friends that are super awesome and way younger than me, so I'm not knocking any of them. I'm just saying that thieves and bad-intentioned individuals are way more common than in prior, and you're far more likely to find people that value money over living things these days. And a lot of people agree with me on this, so maybe we're just old, or maybe it's actually happening. Who knows? Personally, I learned a long time ago that good people are hard to come by, and so when you find them, it's important to keep them close to you, and always help each other. Material things come and go, but your friends will always be there as long as you treat them right. I would rather ask somebody for something if I needed it, or not even have to ask because they would automatically share it as you would with them, than worrying about getting stolen from. Nor do I want to steal from anyone, especially the homeless. Anyways, I've got bad ADHD, and I'm totally missing my point because this story is about me having never seen a ghost before and being extremely, extremely excited to see one. Quite a few times I would take a candle and go out ghost hunting at night in hopes of seeing at least one of the two that everybody regularly saw in this particular building. They would all describe the same basic two entities, so I knew what I was looking for. One night, after yet another unsuccessful hunt, I was headed back home to the room where my bed was located, along with a couple that adopted me. My friend, Motorhead, who was a very tall, dark-skinned man, and he always wore all black. I guess he was a roadie for Motorhead at some point, and he was always wearing a Motorhead shirt, long black sleeves underneath, with black jeans, and of course his black boots, no matter how hot the summer was. Not to mention his beanie and sunglasses. I remember saying hello to him, but then walking through him, and the sensation I had when I passed through him is indescribable. As this was not Motorhead, it was the very first ghost I had ever seen, and definitely not the last. For a really long time I had no idea that there was actually such thing as shadow people, as I thought that it was just a term that meth addicts would use to describe people and things that did not exist when they've been awake for too long. That's the story of the first ghost I ever saw, and it may not be the most entertaining story in the universe. However, it was my first physical, personal encounter with the unknown, and I am really glad that I learned how to not be so stupid that I didn't know everything in the universe before I turned 18. I actually cried the day I turned 18 because I knew that I had to be responsible for myself from that day forward. There was no more messing around under fake names, and now that I had to actually be careful, everything was not fun and games anymore, though I had yet to lose an eye. So once again, thank you to Kristin for sending that in, and I hope I could do your story justice. This story was submitted to the channel by Paul, so thank you, Paul, for submitting this, and I hope I can do it justice. This happened a while ago, but it still haunts me. I really don't know how to compartmentalize it, and if I hadn't had a friend with me who saw and experienced the exact same thing, I would chalk it up to thinking that I imagined the whole thing. I'll keep my name and my friend's name out of this story as I don't want notoriety for it, but I would like to explain exactly where it happened, as I would love to hear if anyone else has experienced anything similar to what my friend and I experienced. This happened on October 13th, 1988. It was a cold Thursday evening. My friend and I have been at the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, Iowa, since August, and it was our freshman year. We each lived in two of the oldest dorms on campus, her in Lawther Hall and I in Bartlett Hall. We were just out for a walk after finishing studying, and we both felt like wandering and exploring. My friend had heard that they were working on making a haunted house in Lawther, and that some of her friends were working on it. So we decided to try and find where in the hall they were making it. Neither of us were very familiar with the full layout of the hall, so we just kinda bumbled around, seeing what we could see. Apparently the haunted house was being made in the attic area, so we made our way up the stairs to the highest level. However, the large doors at the very top of the center stairwell were locked, and had dark fabric hanging down from them on the other side. We couldn't hear anyone talking or moving on the other side, so we figured that we'd check the floor below it. Down to the next floor, we found a very quiet floor with dorm rooms, and the width of the center stairwell was where a fire door was to the right, and to the left was another fire door, but on the door to the left it looked older and was painted wood, not steel like the other. A quick look through the door to the right showed us a continuation of the hallway and more dorm rooms. Walking over to the door on the left, we noticed that there was a bathroom door to the left of the wooden door. This will be important later. I tried the handle on this door and it would not turn. Believing it to be locked, I figured that was the end of exploring that floor. As I was turning away, I heard a metallic sound, and my friend gasped in surprise. She said that she grabbed the doorknob and then it turned in her hand in the opposite direction that she was going to turn it, and then pulled open away from her. I turned around quickly to see her now looking into a dark room with now a partially open door. My friend carefully pushed the door open wider and walked in, looking around for a light switch. She had walked in far enough that I could no longer see her very well, and I looked along the left side of the doorframe for a light switch. Finding nothing at what I felt would be the normal height for a switch, I arced my arm wider and found an antiquated style switch at just about head height. Just as I was about to flip the switch, the lights came on, but instinctively I still flipped the switch, shutting them back off again. Again, my friend gasped and I flipped the switch back on, turning the lights back on. She had found another switch on a large pillar further into the room. Looking around, we saw a large room, easily 100 feet long and 40 to 50 feet wide. There were two large wood staircases that crisscrossed each other that led up to a loft area that lined the walls. Large windows lined the room, as well as old-style hospital beds from the early 1900s. There was also an old-style wheelchair and what looked like an old ECG machine or some other mechanical apparatus. On the far end of the room there was another door, similar to the one that we had entered, and there was a light coming from under that door. While we were both fascinated by the room, something felt wrong, like we weren't supposed to be there. We both just left without saying much, and just assumed that it might be part of the setup for the Halloween haunted house. Much later, my friend was talking to another of her friends about the haunted house and asked how the hospital set ties into the whole thing. She was met with a blank stare. Long story short, this led her to ask me what I remembered about the room. I mentioned the large windows. We looked on the outside of Lothar Hall and could not find any such windows. I suggested to my friend that we go up to where the door was and enter the bathroom to the left of the door and look out the bathroom window. That would help us determine from the outside where the large room was. Upon her looking out the window, I could see the building ended where the room should be, and it was an attic space. Nowhere near enough room to have a second-floor loft and large windows like what we saw. We tried doing research to find out if Lothar Hall had ever had a room like that and maybe had been torn down, but no luck. In 1991, we got the help of a couple of the resident assistants to get us a key to check out what was on the other side of that door. Entering now, the low-pitched ceiling had tiny alcoves with small windows and lots of junk in storage. Wandering far into the back of the attic storage space, we found several of the hospital bed frame, head, and footboards, but they were in a much greater state of decay. The wheelchair and the machine thing all covered in thick dust and cobwebs. I don't know what that was and find myself most afraid of the idea that people can just walk into a different room and have it not even be part of this world. Why did it magically happen right at a doorway, all nice and neat like that? Was it another timeline, another universe? I have no idea, but thinking back on how things felt wrong, I wonder what would have happened if we stayed there too long and where we would be now. So again, thank you to Paul for sending in that story. I really enjoyed it, and I hope I did it justice. So, what'd you think of all those stories? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. And, once again, thank you to Paul and to Kristin for sending in their stories. And something that's funny, that whenever I hear, the viewer stories, I always feel compelled to add one of my own in, but this one's not paranormal, it's just funny. So we were exploring this house, me and a friend, and it was said to be super haunted, but we were there during the day and stuff, so not exactly the best time. But we're walking through the kind of decrepit floor and all stuff, trying not to fall through and everything, and we're just looking around, and I hear the slightest shift upstairs, and I go, "Did you hear that?" And we pause for what seemed like forever. And then a cat ran down the stairs, and oh my god, it scared me so bad. You ever be so scared that you just get that light feeling and you feel like your soul has already left the building kind of thing? That's what it felt like. And whenever people send in stories, I always feel bad because my emails are always so short in return. I never know what to say. I really like the story and everything, but I just never have any idea what to respond with other than thanks. I'm so awkward. If anybody ever meets me in real life, they're gonna understand just how awkward I am around other people. But anyways, thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching, and if you have any of your own stories, feel free to send them in at the email in the description below. And yeah, I think I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.